Jin Kyung is a big fan of a K-pop girl group. He was interviewed at one of the concerts, and when asked who his favorite singer was, Kyung ended up making a joke that recently went viral on the internet, but he didn't notice the combination of words and ended up calling himself a criminal. He was arrested, and after being released, he ended up acquiring social anxiety disorder. The protagonist thought he would never live with people again, until one day he was summoned to a fantasy world. People of that place did not know the incident from his past, and he was able to put an end to his social anxiety. The story begins at the concert of a K-pop girl group. The reporter decides to interview some fans who are recording the girls. One of them holds a professional camera and ends up catching the reporter's attention. She approaches and asks which member he likes the most. The guy replies that he likes the singer Young Kid a lot. The reporter asks why she. The boy decides to play a joke and replies that it is because he loves children. The scene changes to police sirens, and as we can see, the guy went wrong. This is our protagonist Jin Kyung. He was arrested and released after clarifying the purpose of the joke. But this did not help the public at all. The day after the show, several headlines were published where it showed the protagonist's face and labeled him as a predator of children. At that moment, Kyung looks shocked at the news and the mean comments. It turns out that the guy didn't exactly want to say that he loved children. The real thing was that the protagonist wanted to copy a famous comedian who said he loved pasta, but ended up making a wrong combination between the word love and the singer's name, which is Kid, so the joke was interpreted as if he were a child predator. 3 years have passed since the incident. Kyung's mother prepares the food and tells him that she is going to work, then asks the boy to eat at least today. After that, she says goodbye and the protagonist finally leaves the room. After what happened, he doesn't even have the courage to see his own parents. The boy takes the food and goes back to the room. He watches his favorite character from a 2D game. The protagonist is another one of those game addicts and competes with the other players to see who wins the prize of the time. After the announcement, we can see that he didn't win. The boy then goes to the conversation forum and realizes that the players are talking about him. The protagonist's name in this game is only 2D. Players talk about him always being online. Someone even says that only 2D must be one of those fat otakus who live with their parents and don't pay bills. That's why he has so much free time. Kyung gets annoyed with the comments made about him. The boy doesn't consider himself an otaku despite watching a lot of anime. He even has a little trauma from this word because the last time he was called that was 3 years ago after that incident with the wrong joke. The protagonist remembers that after that his life changed upside down. He was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and never left the house. At that moment, Kyung looks at the character from the 2D game and says that he wanted to live in a fantasy world, maybe using mana and channeling it through his own body would be something different. He would be able to take control of the world without even breaking a sweat. The boy ends up traveling in this idea and finds the perfect victim to pretend that he is in the game Napaj and I eat him. He tells the doll in front of him named Chan that he will save her. At that moment, Kyung takes the poison from insects and prepares to finish off the mosquito. When he is about to attack with the poison, he screams the name Napaj and I eat him. At that moment, the protagonist is covered by a mist and he feels that he is floating. Suddenly the boy looks down and realizes that he is miles from the ground. He starts to fall, and when he gets close to the ground he lands gracefully. Suddenly a girl comes towards him and happily says that he managed to summon. Kyung doesn't understand anything. She kneels down and thanks him for answering his summoning, then asks what she should call him. The protagonist obviously tries to convince himself that that is a dream. As the girl had no answer, she decides to call him Mr. YouTuber. This is a familiar name for the protagonist, and he asks since when he is a YouTuber. But before having any answer, the girl points to something in front and asks the master to get rid of that thing. Kyung turns around little by little looking for danger. Suddenly his eyes see a giant mosquito. The protagonist points to that thing and then to himself, as if asking if the girl wanted him to defeat that. The girl shakes her head affirmatively. The protagonist realizes that he is being used. But the important thing is that he has now managed to talk to a person since the incident 3 years ago. Kyung tells himself that this is just a dream and there is no reason to be afraid. He will give his all to end this monster. After all, the worst that can happen is to be destroyed and wake up. At that moment the boy walks forward, still holding the mosquito poison he took from the room. He repeats the mantra of the game Napaj and I eat him, and then I throw the poison towards the giant mosquito, but nothing happens and the poison doesn't even come close to the monster. Kyung looks silly and looks embarrassed at the girl. Suddenly the mosquito is hit and split in half by a powerful energy. The two observe the strong explosion. The the girl sees the silhouette of the protagonist in front of that fire and his eyes shine. She says that she initially thought he is just an idiot. Kyung looks at her and celebrates, saying that it worked. The girl has a different feeling of asking if she is liking this idiot. Suddenly an avalanche of sand covers the boy. She tries to see through that dust. The protagonist appears gracefully behind her. The girl wonders what magic was this he used because she has never seen something so powerful in her entire life. In addition, she does not understand as a mere apprentice how she managed to summon such a strong spirit. Anyway, the girl decides to thank her and says that she never thought her skills were so incredible. The protagonist replies that he was also impressed. This leaves the girl confused. She explains that she grew up hearing that they could summon powerful masters from other worlds, but all the summons she has seen so far were not as strong as him. At that moment, the girl calls him by the name of Mr. Yutuba and asks if he is a sorcerer. Kyung is surprised and replies that maybe he is a sorcerer if he disregards what he has in his right hand. The girl wonders if he has a secret power in his right hand. The protagonist mentally says that apparently he will not have any dates even in a fantasy dream. On the other hand, the girl gets excited, wondering if he can be a magical archer or a magical swordsman. At that moment, she remembers that she hasn't introduced herself yet and says that she is an apprentice summoner. Her name is Maina Hayes. She asks if she could summon him again next time. The otaku begins to wonder if the girl is hitting on him or if she is in love, but soon comes to the conclusion that this must be something in her head. Suddenly Kyung remembers the name that the girl introduced herself. As always, the protagonist causes another confusion and pronounces the name of Maina wrong. He is sure he heard the word minor. Again, that trauma from the past comes back and his head keeps repeating the word child. This makes the protagonist very bad, and he decides that he will give the girl a new name. Then he says that from today on, she will be called Chan. Maina does not understand why her name was confused with the smaller word. At that moment, the protagonist looks at her and gives a big smile. He says that if he dreams again, he will make a point of coming to see her. Maina felt that she was rejected when the protagonist changed her name, but she also thinks it's understandable since he's a talented master and she's just an apprentice. At that moment, the girl gives a smile and says that she was very happy to share this dream with him. So now she's going to make her return to her home world. Maina takes the wand and swings from side to side, singing some spells. Kyung looks scared because he recognizes some words. To finish the spell, the girl speaks the words Napaj and Edom. The protagonist finally understands what she is saying, and when he goes to speak, he is sent back to Earth. At that moment, he wakes up in his bed. Since the incident, the protagonist stopped leaving the house and started focusing on anything random. He counted the number of words in a book, and even read things in English backwards. Napaj and Edom is one of them. It means made in Japan backwards. At that moment, Kyung feels that he slept a lot and says that that dream was very crazy. He also remembers that his word backwards that he always pronounced was quoted there. The protagonist feels that he had a lot of fun even though it was a dream. What he doesn't understand is why he woke up so tired. Kyung decides to finally get out of bed, but when he steps on the floor, he feels something on his foot. He looks and finds a leaf. The boy doesn't know how it happened because he hasn't left the apartment for many years. He asks, worried, if at some point he has become a sleepwalker. Meanwhile, in the other rooms of the house, the protagonist's parents stay away from each other and do not talk to each other. The atmosphere of the house is not good since the incident. The mother realizes that the protagonist only had one meal in the day and is worried. She goes to the door and asks if he is hungry. The father simply leaves the house when he sees his wife trying to contact Kyung. The man sits on the bench in the square while smoking. At that moment, he looks towards the protagonist's room and calls him garbage. Meanwhile, Kyung hears his mother call and does not answer. He believes that his social phobia is not the reason why he avoids the family. In fact, he just doesn't know how his parents will react if he lives with him. Suddenly his belly growls. Kyung decides to turn off the computer and eat later. At that moment, he presses to restart, and the next moment, he is sent to another place. The boy finds himself falling again. The scene changes to Maina. The girl meets with her group and apologizes to Jake for the delay. The man replies that everything is fine because they just arrived. He then asks how the village was. Maina replies that everything was destroyed. The place was completely taken over by monsters. Jake takes a deep breath and says that the same thing happened in Portran. Suddenly, the blue-haired girl sitting by the fire stands up. She asks worriedly what happened to her uncle. Jake calls her Miss Elara and asks her to calm down. The man says that the Earl of Portran is fine and asked her to be escorted to her hometown. Elara sighs in relief. After that, Jake turns his attention to Maina and praises her speed. since she had to take a different route to dodge the giant mosquito. The girl remembers that in fact that mosquito was defeated by the protagonist, but prefers not to say that she made an invocation because they probably won't believe it, so she just says that that giant monster has disappeared. Elera says that this is the relief and asks where is the dress she asked her to get. At that moment Mena remembers that she couldn't bring it because the village was taken over by the monsters. Elera doesn't like the answer and tells the girl to do push-ups along with the poor intern who has been there for a long time. Jake scolds the count's niece and says that Mena is not to blame. It would be very dangerous to enter that village. Elera recognizes this and apologizes, saying that she is sorry and that she forgot that Mena was always last in training. The girl takes the opportunity to soften her lady's heart even more and pass unscathed from the push-ups. Suddenly a loud noise is heard. They look up and find nothing. Jake says that the Fallen must have started their investigations. Mena asks curious what the Fallen are. The man explains that an ancient legend tells the story of the master of this mountain. At first the master let humans take whatever was necessary, from fruits to animal hunting, but humanity failed to control itself and ended up taking more than necessary. Someday all the villages were set on fire and the villagers received a mark on their foreheads. The mark is given to those who cause damage to nature. Then the master sends the Fallen to mark and even murder if necessary. Naturally people try to destroy the Fallen and flee. It is a good option, but they chase those who have the mark to the ends of the earth. Mena is surprised and asks if that bell ringing means that someone annoyed the mountain master. Jake confirms and adds that the rumors say that the master of this mountain is particularly scary. Elera points to poor Benny who is still doing push-ups and sends Jake to accompany him, since he brought her to a place as dangerous as this. The man argues that they are there exactly because the monsters are afraid of that master, so they are safe. A silence spreads through the place. Suddenly, Mena remembers something and asks Jake what would happen if a summoned spirit destroyed the mountain. The man quickly replies that the master would send Fallen to catch whoever summoned him. Mena starts to break out in a cold sweat and confesses that she actually used a summoned spirit to defeat the giant mosquito, but her spirit destroyed some mountains along the way. A silence falls over them and Elera can't hold back her laughter. Jake asks the girl to stop laughing and also tells Mena not to play with these things. He adds that all they have to do now is remain silent until the Fallen do their job. At that moment a loud bang is heard near them and the group looks horrified at the Fallen. Jake stands up while that colossal monster looks at them. He doesn't understand what he did wrong to get the attention of a Fallen one. At that moment Jake yells that they need to run because the Fallen will try to mark them. Elera gets up and says she will take care of it. She quickly summons a spirit called Jin. The spirit and the Fallen get into a fight. Mana looks surprised. The fight intensifies and the forest starts to catch fire. Jake says that at first it seemed unfair the attack of the Fallen with them, but now that Elera has started a forest fire, it doesn't seem so unfair anymore. The girl smiles embarrassed. Meanwhile Jin manages to hit the Fallen and continues an attack sequence. The spirit manages to hold him on the ground. Jake says they have to take advantage while Jin has the control to flee. At that moment Mena begins to tremble and points forward. A group of fallen people appears in the forest looking at them. In an instant the spirit Jin is defeated by those colossal monsters. The group realizes that they don't have much to do and starts running for their lives. Meanwhile the trainee Benny stayed behind doing push-ups. Mena keeps running even tired and suddenly trips over the root of a tree. She falls to the ground and when she looks around she realizes that she has lost herself from the superiors. At that moment a fallen man appears and looks at her. Mena quickly gets up and runs in the opposite direction, but bumps into a tree and finds herself surrounded by fallen people. A few minutes later the girl appears lying on the ground held by a black chain and with the mark of her forehead. Mena almost can't move and says that in a way it was Mr. YouTube's fault too, so in a last attempt to save her life, she raises her hand and tries to summon the protagonist, but nothing happens and she cries saying that she is useless. Suddenly a blue energy shoots from the girl to the sky. She looks scared when she sees a silhouette among the dust. Kyung asks if it took too long. The fallen look at each other confused. The protagonist finds it strange because apparently he managed to enter the same dream again and this time brought a mouse. Suddenly Mena starts to be dragged and screams for help. Kyung even calls her by Chan's name and asks if she wants him to fight with these things. The boy says that this dream is getting more and more dangerous and remembers that last time he destroyed a giant monster very easily. He doesn't know how strong he is in this world, but celebrates by saying that this place was made perfectly for him. Meanwhile Mena continues to scream for his Lord Yutuba. The protagonist runs to her and takes a deep breath, trying to catch her breath. The girl assumes that she summoned him in the middle of a training session and apologizes. On the other hand, Kyung asks how he is going to destroy this thing if he didn't bring the poison. Mana doesn't understand what he's talking about and assumes it's some magic wand. At that moment, the protagonist notices the mark and asks why his forehead is on fire. The girl says that she was marked by a fallen, that's why she is weak and tied by this strange chain. Kyung replies that she can rest assured because he will black out. Suddenly the boy picks up sand and throws it in her face. Mana screams that her eyes are hurting. The protagonist changes the method and tries to erase it with slaps. She says it's better to stop because it's not working. Now she has a headache and can't even see anymore. Suddenly Kyung surprises her with a spit on her forehead. The mark is instantly erased and the chain breaks. Mana is shocked. The fallen realize that the magic has been interrupted and run to attack, but the protagonist starts spitting on them. The fallen ones get weak and disappear. Kyung asks if this is serious. He doesn't understand how he can defeat these monsters just by spitting. Meanwhile, Mana tries to wipe the saliva that the protagonist left on his face. A few seconds later, he warns that the monsters are gone. The scene changes to Jake and Alera, who are in another part of the forest, still trying to defeat the fallen, but their attack is very weak. Suddenly the fallen begin to retreat and disappear. Jake asks what is happening. The next moment several thunders begin to emerge and a silhouette is seen in the sky. Suddenly a powerful monster begins to rise. Mana screams that this is the master. Benny looks at the sky as he continues the exercise. Suddenly the giant monster screams and punches the ground with all his strength. The protagonist is thrown away with the girl. Half of the place is destroyed. Mana sees Kyung in a suspicious position and asks if he is okay. The protagonist still feels weak and says that it would have been different if he brought the spray poison instead of the mouse. Suddenly he realizes that this mouse is wireless and has an idea. Kyung stands up and asks if Mana can do him a favor if he survives. The girl looks surprised and replies yes. The protagonist starts to move away towards the master's light and says that now he has a reason to come back alive. Mana starts to sweat and says that that stupid feeling is back. At that moment the protagonist raises the mouse and starts repeating all the sound bites he learned by watching anime. The boy's plan is basically to use his body as a channel to direct 10 billion volts to the monster. If it works, turning this thing into dust will be easy. The protagonist prepares himself and throws the mouse towards the thunder, then tells that thing to burn in hell. Nothing happens and an awkward silence falls on the two. Mana asks if it's better to run. Kyung realizes that he forgot an item with him and says that now you just need to position the pile in the right place. Suddenly the force of electricity throws the boy back and the monster is hit by lightning sequences. That scene is watched by everyone on the mountain. The sky lights up as electricity rains on the monster. The place around it ends up being affected too. After a few minutes of electrical discharge, the monster is finally defeated. A dark mist spreads throughout the place. Mana goes to the protagonist, who is in the suspicious position again. He screams in fear after having a nightmare and sees her in front of him. Kyung realizes that it was not a nightmare and notices the happy expression on her face. This makes the boy understand that he won. Mana starts screaming that he was amazing and destroyed that monster in one attack. Not even the most powerful sorcerers could do that. Kyung brags, saying that he only released the seal of power of the Lightning King. Mana bows, saying that she didn't imagine he would help her again, but he replies that it's okay. The girl then remembers that he was going to ask for a favor and asks what it is. Kyung is silent for a moment. Then he starts shouting that I didn't imagine she would think about it right now. Mana is confused. The boy sighs deeply and says, embarrassed, that he will tell next time. Mana's eyes fill with hope hearing him say next time. Kyung is surprised and she smiles. A little later the protagonist returns home. He looks thoughtfully at a red emblem he got from Mana. The girl said that the name was Etag. She confesses that she prepared it because she is still an apprentice and does not know how to summon perfectly. Etag serves as a link between the spirit and the summoner, so they will remain connected even in different worlds. Bringing that emblem home made the protagonist realize that everything he has lived so far in the other world was not a dream. He starts screaming that it was real. Kyung says he has always been sure that there is a sleeping dragon inside him. The boy feels like bragging and remembers that he is alone, so he decides to go to the only place that always has people. At this point the players celebrate that he is back online and asks where only 2D has been. Kyung writes that he just saved a beautiful girl. The guys laugh and say that it is the typical phrase of a YouTuber. The protagonist tries to say that he summoned to a fantasy world and fought with a giant, but no one believes it. This annoys the boy and he says that he will prove now that he is really strong. Kyung approaches the window to squeeze the poison spray. Obviously nothing happens and he says he already knew. The mouse beeps warning that he is out of battery. The boy finally remembers that he threw the batteries. The scene changes to Maina. She finds Benny and asks if he's still doing push-ups. The guy with tears in his eyes says that Miss Alara didn't give him permission to get up. The girl orders him to get up and says that Alara is miles away from here now. The guy obeys and takes his things to leave. He comments on that thing is scary and asks if the lady is okay. Maina replies that that woman ran faster than her. Benny says he is happy, but his face shows the opposite and Maina comments on it. The guy tries to change the subject, asking what that explosion was. The girl gets excited and talks about how the monster was defeated. Benny asks if it was Alara who did it. Maina says that it was actually the spirit she invoked. The guy doesn't seem to believe much in this story and only answers that he understands. Maina asks if he knows why Alara doesn't like him. A silence hangs over the two. Meanwhile, at the protagonist's house, he screams in front of the computer that he can't believe he lost it. It must be because he was in the other world for a long time. At that moment, the boy watches his favorite K-pop group. Hyung remembers that he waited a long time for this subtitled interview to come out. At that moment the broadcast starts and he watches it carefully. The reporter asks a girl named Young Kid why she was so long off open television. The girl replies that she needed some time to recover. She says that she suffered many jokes because of her name in childhood. The reporter asks what she answered. The girl replies that she only said that Kid was her last name. She also gets into the subject of the incident 3 years ago when a guy made a joke with that name. At that moment the protagonist turns everything off. He lowers his head and starts to regret everything that happened. Kyung feels that the girl is faking this suffering even though he knows that he would never be able to say something mean to her. He remembers that she always said she was grateful to have him on her show. The protagonist gets upset because Kid knows it was a misunderstanding and keeps trying to put him as a criminal. After the incident, the protagonist began to understand that Young Kid was reliving that moment to get attention and become popular. This worked and she became more famous. Consequently, the hatred against him was also growing. The image of a kind and polite girl was just a show. The protagonist ended up creating anger from all the idols until one day he ended up meeting an idol named Emily-chan. The girl, it looked adorable and the protagonist began to admire its sweetness. Emily made a series and the first season was enough for Kyung to get emotional. At that moment, he takes the doll from the 2D game he used as a decoration and apologizes, saying that from today he has a new idol. The protagonist keeps the doll in the drawer and enters the website to buy one from Emily. He looks at the website and realizes that his mother's card is still on the computer. The protagonist is incredulous when he realizes that Emily's best-selling doll is the one with the least clothes. He curses the buyers of disgusting otakus. The comments are even worse than he imagined and some confessions are disgusting. This annoys the protagonist, and he says that these people don't really love Emily. The last comment makes Kyung go crazy. He asks how there can be a human being like that. At this moment the protagonist's mother is working when she receives a notification on her cell phone. She assumes that Kyung bought something and is surprised. The customer calls her attention and the woman apologizes for being distracted. The mother continues to wonder if her son has changed and is now thinking about leaving. Back to the protagonist. He celebrates that he finally bought Emily's doll. The boy is so anxious that he spends the next few days just sleeping and going to check on the computer where the order is. He finally finishes watching the second season of Emily's series and says he can rest now. At that moment the red emblem catches his attention and he wonders if Maina is okay. Kyung tries to convince himself that he is not worried about her. It's just curiosity. Suddenly the doorbell rings and he almost falls out of fright. The protagonist runs to the door and realizes that he is the delivery man. His social phobia is still very present and he can't face the delivery man, so he only asks the man to leave the package at the door. The delivery man obeys and starts to leave. Kyung counts the time on the clock until he feels safe to pick it up. He intends to leave when there is no one in the hallway. When the boy feels safe he runs to pick up his long-awaited package. Kyung opens the door, saying that he finally overcame the barrier and is out of the house again, but what the boy didn't expect was to find a neighbor in the hallway of the building. The woman stares at him incredulously and the protagonist starts to crawl along with the package back to the apartment. He closes the door and the neighbor keeps looking. The boy runs to the room and gets excited saying that he managed to get the package. He feels very victorious and even cries. Meanwhile, Maina finally accompanies her group. After 3 days walking through the forest, Elera asks why it took so long and she replies that Benny has no sense of direction. The woman now understands why Mana was late. She looks at the poor boy and asks where he was. Benny says incredulous that she told him to do 1,000 push-ups. Elera makes a pitying expression and asks if he was there until now, then asks who told him to stop. Benny drops his backpack and begins his suffering again. A few days later, Elera and Mana arrive at the house of the Count of Portrin. Elera invites Mana to come in, but the girl desperately denies, saying that she is just a commoner. Elera reassures the girl, saying that they studied together and it is obvious that she will enter. Mana is convinced and enters the house. Inside, the Count thanks her for helping her niece destroy those monsters. Elera joins the conversation and says that Mana just ran while she defeated everything by herself. The Count just laughs and tells Mana that she can stay and work in her house if she has nowhere else to go. Here she will have food and laundry. The girl gets very excited and quickly accepts the job. A little later, the girl takes her hot shower. She also received new and clean clothes. Mana says she is surprised by the Count's generosity. She puts on the clothes she received to work and goes to the maid. The woman asks her if she can start working now, and the girl confirms, thinking that the job will be quiet. But the next moment she realizes that she was mistaken. The girl tells herself that she didn't imagine it would be so hard to get clean clothes and food. Mana approaches the experienced maid and asks why they are all wearing the same clothes. The woman starts by saying that the Count is obsessed. Soon after, she corrects herself and says that he cares a lot about cleanliness. The scene changes to the scared protagonist. He looks at Emily's doll and realizes that it is the same as in the ad. As we can see, the boy is a tremendous hypocrite. Meanwhile, Mana feels cheated. She remembers that her late parents always said that it was not to trust nobles, because as soon as they found an opportunity, they would make commoners servants. At that moment, the girl wipes the floor while apologizing to her parents for being in this situation. Back to the protagonist. He keeps looking at Emily's doll. The boy is definitely delighted. He even says that if he had money he would fill the room with it, but he is satisfied for now. Outside, the protagonist's parents have dinner alone at the table. The woman decides to tell her husband that Kyung received an order alone today. The man replies that it is the minimum and says that the only things that cannot do this are the dogs and cats. The wife is silent. She hoped that her husband would be happy with the progress of the child, but that was not what happened. After dinner, she washes the dishes while her husband goes to work. The next day, one of the maids calls Mana and tells her that she completed the task very well last time, so the Count decided to reward her with a different task. Mana is happy and asks what the task is. The maid says that lately many monsters have appeared, and that's why several servants have lost their lives. Now the Count is short of employees and urgently needs farmer servants. Thinking about it, the Count decided to lend her a land as a special favor, so Mana can pay her debt by cultivating the land and harvesting the products. Mana is surprised to hear the word debt because she knows that she has not made any debt with this man. The maid says that she went into debt at the time she received food and housing. In addition, there is still the shower she takes and the fact that she is protected by the guards since she is inside the house. Mana is incredulous because she thought that the salary she does not receive would already pay that. The maid starts to leave and says that the Count expects her to quickly pay the debt by taking care of this land, and it's good that she does it in a timely manner. Mana is left alone and screams in frustration. A few minutes later, the girl starts to clear the land, removing branches and stones from the path. After a lot of effort, she looks at the work and says that it's not even that difficult, but the next moment Mana can't stand it and starts crying. She remembers the protagonist and wonders what she should do. The scene changes to Kyung. He hears the doorbell ring and sees a delivery man. The boy wonders if his parents bought anything. In ordinary times he would never open the door, but he feels safer because he managed to pick up a package yesterday. He takes a deep breath and tells the delivery man that he can leave the package at the door. The guy obeys and says goodbye. The protagonist repeats to himself that it is very easy to do this. He looks through a device at the door and realizes that there is no one in the hallway. When he is about to leave, the neighbor's door opens and he goes back. Kyung says it was a close call. The neighbor notices a package at his house and comments to a guy next to him that yesterday something happened very strange. The man questions what it was. She says that she heard a noise and came to see what it was. That's when she came across a package in the neighboring apartment and started to hear a noise behind the door saying that she was going to break the barrier, so she waited to see what was going to happen. The woman says that at that moment a guy with big hair and torn clothes left the apartment. His eyes were black as if he hadn't slept. The woman says she even thought it was a ghost. The guy starts laughing and says it must be a ghost of those men with social problems. The neighbor replies that she is not sure, but hopes to never meet that guy again. Unfortunately, the protagonist heard the whole conversation. His head goes back to the incident from 3 years ago. Kyung remembers the insults and threats he heard. He was labeled as a criminal, and since then, he has not been able to interact with people anymore. At that moment, the protagonist lies on the ground without strength. A few hours pass and his father returns home. He soon finds the package near the door. The wife gives the news that she found Kyung lying on the floor when he came home from work. He collapsed again and she thought about taking him to the hospital, but the boy refused and locked himself inside the room. The father obviously doesn't care much about the situation. The wife asks the man not to put too much pressure on his son, but he says he won't stop shopping because of someone like Kyung. After that, the man entered the room and she went back to the kitchen. On the other hand, the protagonist lay down without any reaction, covered with blankets. The scene changes to Maina. The maid delivers letters to the employees. The count keeps his gaze fixed on Maina and even makes a stupid comment saying that he made the right choice, and that the outfit made her much tastier. The head maid says goodbye saying that everyone received tasks from the count, so they must work hard. After that, Maina was sent to the field with other employees. The girl is not at all satisfied with the work she has had in the last few days. She has worked as a maid, cleaner, and now as a farmer. What makes her more angry are some tasks that she has to do at night that are very strange. On the farm there are also some men who work as guards and farmers, so Maina doesn't feel very alone. But she realized that the count has many people who do everything for him, from hunting, food, clothing, agriculture, and security. Maina feels that all this is very unfair because in the end all the workers create a debt with the count. She walks wearily and wonders if she is being made a servant. The girl even remembers that there are some men who give their lives so that the monsters do not get close to the nobleman. She starts to scream angrily, but soon calms down and says that she needs to continue the work. At that moment, Maina comes across some birds uprooting their small plants. She starts screaming, asking what they are doing with her field. The girl puts her hand on her head angrily and tells herself that she shouldn't worry so much about a damn piece of land that isn't even hers, but she knows that the debt will continue to increase if she doesn't produce what she should on these lands. Maina then takes a deep breath, determined to take control of the situation. He feels like summoning the protagonist, but thinks that summoning a djinn is enough. The girl then begins to channel the spell and summons the spirit. The next moment he disappears. Maina resorts to the second method and runs after the birds with an axe. She finally manages to keep those things away from her harvest. The girl regrets that the summoning has failed and says that maybe it's better to be a farmer anyway, since they have no talent for summoning. The scene changes to the count's house. Alara receives Jake and soon asks how her father is. The man reassures her by saying that the Duke is already at home and has found measures to deal with the monsters. The count enters the conversation and asks if they already know why the monsters are appearing so often. Jake replies that he came here exactly to give details about it. Sometime later, the count and Alara enter a meeting room to talk to a hooded man. Benny pours some tea and walks away. The count then asks the man if he was sent by Her Majesty. The guy confirms and introduces himself as a Ranian magician. Alara is surprised by the appearance of a magician. Ranian explains that in the past there were many wizards, but now that most people can summon spirits, they have been left aside for a while. The count laughs, saying who has been using magic for a long time, and asks if Ranian is from the continent of Kalidian. The wizard confirms and the count is surprised. Ranian says that it is exactly what he is thinking. It is there that the portal from the world of demons to their world. Ranian says that the count must know that the wizards of Kalidian were sent to seal the portal and prevent the demons from entering their world. Several kingdoms have sent thousands of soldiers for hundreds of years to maintain this seal. The problem is that lately the number of demons has increased and they ended up breaking the barrier to this world. The continent of Kalidian was practically destroyed, and now the demons that passed through the portal are attacking the south. The count shouts here this is impossible, and asks how the kingdoms that were neighbors of Kalidian in the north turned out. The wizard replies that the demons passed through the kingdom of Stingrays and the place became a battlefield. His Majesty sent some men to Stingrays to fight the demonic threat, and is also organizing an expedition to find out the cause of the incident in the north. Alara is surprised and Ranian asks if she was not the one who bragged about meeting several useful people for a mission of this level. The girl is embarrassed. Benny tries to defend the boss and says that everyone knows that Alara is the best summoner in the region. Suddenly the woman scolds him with a look. Benny runs to do the push-ups. The girl then takes a deep breath and replies that she knows many talented summoners for the job. then asks for time to recruit them. Meanwhile, Maina continues her hard work. She comments that the land is too large and requires more work. At that moment the girl's attention is attracted to a small shoot. She is surprised because she received the information that it would take at least 5 days for the plants to start showing leaves. Maina even cries with happiness. Suddenly she hears a noise and sees the same chickens as before. Maina already prepares the axe and starts saying that she will finish off anyone who enters her field. Suddenly the girl's expression changes and she is horrified. Unfortunately this time she would not have to deal only with small birds. A gigantic bird looks at Maina with fury in her eyes. The girl starts to sweat cold and asks if they brought mommy. Suddenly the monster advances towards her, destroying everything around. At that moment the protagonist widens his eyes, feeling that something is wrong. The emblem on the table begins to shine brightly and he understands what happened. Kyung feels that this time the danger is greater. But this makes the boy even happier and he jumps out of bed prepared, saying that he waited a long time for this. The protagonist is immediately teleported to the fantasy world. Maina looks up noticing a blue light. She smiles asking if it is Mr. Yutuba. Suddenly Kyung appears doing various poses in the sky. The girl is embarrassed and asks him to come down soon. The protagonist lands on the ground gracefully while the girl tries to hide. She knows that Kyung is crazy and always creates some explosions. The protagonist looks at the giant chicken and asks if this is the monster of the time. He turns to Maina about to ask something and finds her in that suspicious position. Kyung starts screaming, asking what happened and deduces that it is the monster's fault. Then he tells her not to worry because he will destroy that thing. He takes out a lighter he brought in his bag and points it at the bird. Kyung repeats some words of effect he saw in anime, but the monster doesn't wait for him to finish and runs towards him. The protagonist gets angry and yells that the chicken should let him finish. At that moment Kyung lights the lighter and throws the fire laser with all his strength towards the monster. The fire shoots out like a blade and hits the bird's head. One move is enough for Kyung to defeat the monster, but he aims the next attack at the bird's body and splits it in half. An explosion happens and several feathers fly. The protagonist watches carefully what he has done and comments that he loves this smell of fried chicken. The boy begins to feel happy and says that when he is in this world, he has a very good feeling, despite being a dangerous place. He is really happy here. Meanwhile Maina looks at his destroyed field and asks how he could cause this with a single blow. Anyway she thanks him for saving her. Kyung is surprised and says he didn't know it was her field. Maina replies that it's actually the count's. He asks surprised if she's a farmer now. Suddenly the protagonist notices the girl's uniform and is hypnotized to see it. He mentally says that she is very cute and notices every detail of the outfit. The first time she saw something like this was in anime, but in person it's much cooler. Kyung can't look away and remembers that the closest thing she saw in person was in a cosplay, but this material that Maina is wearing looks much more comfortable. She also has a unique smell that can't get out of her mind. Suddenly the protagonist falls to the ground. Looking at the girl's legs, she asks confused what is he doing. Kyung quickly gets up and says he just went to check if she wasn't injured. Maina smiles saying she's fine. Suddenly the little birds start making noise attracting their attention. Kyung makes a crazy face and asks if they also want to be fried. Maina says he sounds like a bad guy now. Suddenly something appears behind the little ones that makes the protagonist change his expression. This time the chicken is much bigger than the last one. Kyung asks incredulously if that one is a father, then starts to say that he fried his wife. The monster makes a terrifying noise. The protagonist says that everything will be fine. Maina asks if this time he can leave the field intact. Suddenly the conversation is interrupted by a few footsteps that are heard. The noise gets closer and the next moment several monsters appear near the father. That noise of the main monster was to summon the other chickens. The protagonist looks at the amount of creature and asks if Maina really wants him to be careful with the field. The girl replies that she thinks it's better for him to set everything on fire. Kyung thanks him and says that he will show the other side of his power. At that moment, he lights the lighter and nothing happens because it is empty. The protagonist looks surprised and remembers that he forgot his weapons at home. He asks the girl if he can go back to his world for a few seconds. Maina is paralyzed when she hears this. The protagonist replies that he doesn't need to. He prefers not to leave now because he didn't get enough out of that uniform, so he decides that he will solve the situation anyway. The boy throws everything from the bag on the floor looking for some item that works. He finds a mosquito coil and his eyes shine with hope. Kyung understands that this is going to be very useful. Maina screams desperately that the monsters are approaching. The protagonist now uses the last remnant of the lighter to light the coil. then lifts up towards the monsters. He feels a familiar sensation and doesn't understand why. Maina keeps screaming that the chickens are coming. Suddenly Kyung remembers where the familiar feeling came from and says that he will be able to protect Maina's field with the mosquito coil. The smoke of the poison begins to circulate and in moments spreads throughout the area. The protagonist runs through the field, and yellow lines form thanks to the poison. The monsters are destroyed by touching the lines and their bodies catch fire. Kyung keeps running while the girl stays behind. The birds are destroyed one by one. The fire spreads through all the feathers and suddenly an explosion happens. Maina looks horrified and is relieved when she sees the protagonist alive among the dust. She runs to ask if everything is okay. All the monsters were easily defeated. Kyung replies that it is okay and Maina asks what it was. He decides to simplify it because he knows she won't understand if he only says it's a mosquito coil, so he says he made a supreme defense barrier. Kyung strikes a proud pose and she asks if this barrier will protect his field. He replies that yes, at least until the coil burns out completely. After that the protagonist remembers the question he was going to ask and questions why she is a farmer now. Maina sadly replies that it happened. He asks if she is growing all this alone. She says yes. Kyung comments that it is dangerous. Maina agrees and says that lately the monsters are appearing more and more. She thought this place was safe, but apparently she was deceived. The protagonist asks where she is living because he wants to leave her at home. He quickly says that it is not because he is worried. The girl replies that she understands and begins to lead the way. She still calls him Mr. YouTuber and says that he is someone very interesting. Kyung asks why she thinks so. Maina replies that normally the summoned spirit have a lot of difficulty staying in their world. For this to happen the summoner has to have an absurd strength. But for some reason the protagonist manages to stay there as long as he wants, even if he doesn't have the strength, so she gets worried and asks if it's okay for him to stay there. Kyung replies that everything is fine and brags saying that he is not like those useless spirits she is used to. Maina looks at him and then looks away. Meanwhile the protagonist continues to brag. Suddenly he realizes that the girl has been silent and asks if there is anything bothering her. Maina asks awkwardly if he thinks it is a waste of time to work on something you have no talent for. The protagonist is silent and she starts to say that someone like him might not understand this. The protagonist interrupts her and scratches his chin thoughtfully. He says that maybe it's a waste of time. It's usually hard to do something when you have talent he prefers not to waste time with. Something he knows is not good. Maina gets teary-eyed when she hears this. The protagonist keeps saying that people always find a way to say that they gave their best or that they deserve more, as if they were the main character of some story. There are people who are even able to say that someone is strange. The girl doesn't understand why Kyung is going that way and asks what he wants to say. The protagonist disguises it because he ended up talking too much when remembering what happened to the neighbor. He says that this is just his imagination. She lowers her head saying that she understands. This conversation makes the girl come to the conclusion that in the end she is not undecided between being a summoner or a maid. Suddenly the protagonist interrupts her thoughts, remembering that some time ago the girl promised that she would fulfill a wish from him. Maina is startled by the unexpected conversation. He then hands her a bag and says he brought her something to be safe. The only thing the girl has to do is put it on at least once. At that moment Maina goes behind a rock and the protagonist closes his eyes. Suddenly the girl screams, holding a pair of panties and a bra. She says that this is very embarrassing and asks why he brought something like this to her. Kyung replies that it is a costume of her favorite character named Emily. He asks her to wear it and says that he is covering her eyes. It will only open when she is already dressed. Maina looks like she is about to explode with embarrassment. She holds that underwear while shaking. The girl definitely didn't expect him to want to see her wearing that. Kyung justifies his action by saying that he's not trying to take advantage of her. In fact, he just wants to make sure she's protected. Suddenly the boy is transported back to the room and doesn't notice. He still thinks that Maina is listening and says that he is in love with the maid uniform, but he thinks that would be better. The minutes pass, and the protagonist feels safe to open his eyes. But as soon as he does that, he realizes that he has returned home and screams for Maina. Meanwhile, the girl in another world apologizes for sending him back home. She just thought it would be too embarrassing to wear those things for him. A few days later, the protagonist spends some time in front of the computer wondering if he did something wrong. He then starts screaming, saying that he just wanted to see Maina in a bikini. The boy is sure she would look very beautiful and doesn't understand why he was expelled from his world. At that moment the mother outside hears Kyung's screams. The woman is surprised, wondering if her son has already improved. She thought he would be depressed for a few days. but it seems she was wrong. Meanwhile, the protagonist is thoughtful about his actions. He wonders if he went over the limit asking her to wear that outfit. Kyung remembers that he never had the courage to approach a girl before and decides to learn more about it so as not to make any mistakes. He then does a search on the internet asking if girls like to receive underwear. The answers were not what he expected. The female comments say that this is the apex of the absurd. No woman would like to receive such a gift. Someone even says that he must be an otaku to do this. The protagonist realizes that people did not interpret his question as he wanted. Kyung thinks that giving a bikini to a girl could mean an invitation to a pool or something, so he doesn't understand why he's being insulted. Anyway, the protagonist realizes that what he did wasn't so convenient, since 3 days have passed and the girl hasn't invoked him once. At that moment, the protagonist looks at the emblem and hopes she's okay. The scene changes to Maina. The day is already getting dark and the girl thinks it's better to water some of these plants. She just wanted it to rain to save a little more of her time, but at least now she's quiet without any monsters, thanks to Mr. YouTuber. Suddenly someone starts calling her name and she looks back. Benny approaches and the girl asks where he has been. The guy replies that it has been 3 days since he was allowed to walk. Maina asks where he has been all this time. Benny replies that he went to get Mrs. Alera's dress. She then asks if he is not terrible with location. Benny says that is why it took him 3 days to return. He decides to change the subject and asks how the plantation is. She replies that it is doing well for now. When she lived alone she was too busy with summoning classes, so she didn't pay attention to anything else. But now her only concern is to listen to what the count tells her to do. Benny notices the sadness in the girl's tone of voice. He then decides to remember a saying that says that a wild animal dreams of living in a herd. Maina looks shocked when compared to a wild animal. Benny says that cattle, for example, don't need to worry about predators or food. Sometimes people want to be ruled by someone just like cattle. Maina begins to understand what he is saying. Benny explains that people who submit to this try to convince themselves that it is okay to be exploited, but in the end they will realize that the price of this is their freedom. At that moment he looks at him and gives a big smile, saying that he wanted to be someone free. Maina lowers her head. Benny says that she is a free citizen and can still summon spirits, then advises the girl to leave. If she uses her own talent she can even become a noble. At that moment Maina interrupts him saying no. She sadly says that she has no talent, but Benny asks if she was not the one who summoned a spirit that defeated that titan. Maina replies that she can only summon a single spirit and was lucky that he was strong. The guy asks if it's not better to have a strong spirit than several weak ones. She replies that it's not quite like that. If a strong spirit takes a lot of damage while fighting, it will have to return to the world it came from and no longer responds to the summons. On the other hand, lower level spirits can be summoned again. The stronger ones are more likely to be a single entity. Benny starts to get drunk with so much information. The girl then sums it up by saying that hiring a farmer is easy because there are countless farmers, but there is only one per province. Benny finally understands. The girl says that this is exactly the problem with being able to make only one summoning. She will be unprotected if she can't call Mr. YouTuber. The guy thinks this name is strange. The girl keeps saying that this is why she will give up. Benny begins to agree that she can't. Maina says that he should try to comfort instead of agreeing. Some time later, the Ranian magician returns to Alera's house and asks where the summoners are. The girl makes up an excuse saying that she hasn't recruited anyone yet because she can't send anyone to this dangerous mission. The man apologizes for rushing and says that he only came because of Her Majesty. Alera replies that everything is fine and they say goodbye. The woman returns home and is thoughtful. She doesn't know who she should send to this mission, mainly because she hasn't had contact with any summoner since school. The girl decides that she will send anyone who comes her way. At that moment Maina enters the house and greets her. Benny also talks to her. Alera tells the boy that he should put away clothes, and while he continues to bend over, the poor boy obeys. Maina she takes the opportunity to leave because she knows that this girl is not so nice, but she is interrupted by Alera who tells her to wait. The woman looks at her for a moment in silence. Mania begins to her cold and tremble. Alera comes a little closer and abandons the idea she had. She tells Maina that the girl can go because she changed her mind. Maina immediately obeys and wonders what that scary look was. Alera gave up on recruiting her because she needs someone who summons at least one dog. A few days pass. At this moment the protagonist is in front of the computer, again remembering what happened between him and Maina. It seems that the guy could not get over that event. suddenly his attention is drawn to the chat of the live broadcast of Idol Emily. The comments are from some men praising the girl's body, and especially her melons. Kyung feels uncomfortable because the guys are not there for Emily, but to see her body. The protagonist is also bothered because he is not able to watch the new episodes. The only thing that is going through his mind is what happened between him and Mania. He finally focuses on watching a little of the broadcast and realizes that Emily is different. The girl reveals to her friend that she is thinking of giving up her career of being a singer. This is because her friends say that she is not that good and is not qualified. Her dances do not seem to cheer them up, or the music. The friend questions if her fans did not like the broadcast. Emily replies that the fans only made positive comments. The friend then says that this is what matters. This means that Emily is qualified. This conversation catches the protagonist's attention, and he remembers the question that Maina asked him at that time. She asked him if he thought it was a waste of time to work on something that has no talent. Only now Kyung sees the mistake he made, since at that time he said that the best thing would be to give up if it wasn't good enough. The protagonist remembers Maina's smile when she managed to summon him for the first time. She screamed very happily that she had succeeded. Now he thinks he's an idiot for hurting her feelings. Kyung tells himself that he didn't realize what he had done because he always lived with those garbage on the internet, so she never thought much about someone else's feelings. Suddenly the protagonist screams out loud that because of her mistake she didn't wear that bikini. At that moment Maina feels a shiver down her spine. The girl faces the underwear she received from the protagonist and says that she never thought such a small size could exist. She puts it on top of the clothes she is wearing to sleep and realizes that she will never really be able to wear that, so she puts on a coat and decides to burn her bikini. At that moment Maina walks around the house using a candle to lighten the environment. She finally arrives outside and begins to feel bad for to be doing this with the gift she received from Lord YouTuber, but she thinks he will understand. At that moment a flash catches her attention. The Ranian magician uses magic when he suddenly feels someone approaching. Maina soon introduces herself and says she is a farmer. Ranian greets her and also introduces herself. She asks surprised if he is a magician and if what he has done now is magic. Ranian confirms. Maina confesses that she has never seen magic before and the school she attended was only for summoners. She has never seen any school about mages. The man replies that it is to be expected, then asks how that magic she made just now seemed to her. Mana replies that it seemed like magic to lighten the place. Ranian says that she is right and decides to show a little more of her skills. He spins his finger around them and forms a circle, then screams a spell that explodes the ground and several bright lights begin to come out of the earth. It begins to spread around the place, brightening everything like fireflies. Maina comments exactly that it looks like fireflies. She is happy, saying that all this seems like a dream and she did not imagine that magic was so amazing. Ranian says that it is a wide-range meteor spell, the most destructive spell known and most forbidden as well. It can only be used in battles. Maina is surprised and asks why he is using this spell out there. The wizard calmly replies that he managed to make the spell fail. Maina questions what would have happened if the spell had worked. He replies that some mountains would be blown up. She asks why he is so calm. Ranian replies that it is because he is a high-ranking mage. Mana still seems a little skeptical. The mage explains that there are currently 3 stages to magic. First the incantation, then concentration, and finally the catalyst of all magic. At this moment Ranian creates some flames in his hand and says that for a mage to exist, it is necessary to have mana. If that doesn't happen he is useless. The man adds that this magic he is using now is called a ball of fire. Maina asks if the fact that there are fewer mages nowadays is because mana is running out. Ranian confirms her question and says that this is why there are more summoners nowadays. The summoned spirits also use the mana of the world they came from. In the same way when demons use magic, they also use the mana of their homeworld. The girl listens carefully to all the explanations. Ranian asks if it is boring and she says no. In fact, she is loving the conversation. The magician's explanation made the girl imagine that every time the protagonist came to her world, he was using his skills. She even remembers hearing him speak some strange words when he attacked some monster. At that moment, a figure appears crossing the moon and coming towards them. The girl asks what that is and the wizard assumes that it is a bird. Suddenly that thing approaches with an absurd speed and draws a line over the count's house. The next moment an explosion happens and the house is divided into 2 parts. Ranian and Maina look in shock at it. The fire spreads quickly to all the rooms. Elera and the count manage to escape in time. They look back seeing the house on fire. Someone asks if everyone left the house. Fortunately, all the employees managed to get out in time. The guys celebrated and thanked the demons for doing it. They can't hide the joy of seeing that house being destroyed. The old Earl is also happy that the employees are alive because he needs someone to do all his work. At this moment, Alara remembers someone and asks where Benny is. The guy is behind her doing exercise and replies that everything is fine with him. At this moment, the Earl asks Jake what could have caused the fire. He assumes it was the lunch attack. Suddenly the noise is heard nearby. Jake yells for them to look at it. At that moment, a light makes a path at great speed and turns towards them. Jake is sure it is a demon and pulls the sword, then asks for everything to go down. At that moment, the man throws his sword towards the monster and an explosion happens. A gust of fire passes through them about to hit them, but they remain unharmed. Only the clothes that were torn, and Alara complains, asking what he did. Jake makes it clear that he warned them that they should duck. Alara sees no alternative but to deal with the situation herself. At that moment, the girl prepares herself and casts one of her greatest spells. A high-ranking spirit is summoned. Alara orders the ruler of the storms of Callidian to lend her strength. The spirit obeys her command and goes towards the monster. A strong battle ensues and mere mortals watch it as if it were an action movie scene. Jake praises Alara for her incredible summoning. On the other hand, Benny knows that she only did it to save her own skin. The girl tries to catch her breath and hopes that the fight will end soon because she can't maintain a high-level spirit like this for long. Some noises are heard and the monster gets weaker and weaker. It tries to get up with very slow movements. This is joy for Alara and she feels ready to make a new attack. At that moment, Maina arrives with the magician and asks if her lady is okay. Alara looks suspiciously, feeling that she was caught red-handed. It turns out that from the beginning she was trying to hide her powers from the wizard Ronian, thinking about not being called to the mission. At that moment, Maina asks if that spirit is her mistress's. Alara tries to hide her abilities by saying that this spirit is not hers. Maina says that maybe she was mistaken. Benny remains doing his exercises and mentally asks Maina not to believe Alara's lie. Jake realizes that the monster is very weak and says that maybe they don't even need to attack anymore. Probably that thing will be destroyed by itself. At that moment, the wizard looks horrified at the demon and the count asks if he knows. Ronian wonders aloud if that monster is the guide of the scream. Suddenly the monster manages to reach the sky, but in the next moment he explodes. Alara is happy, saying that this thing has finally been destroyed. On the other hand, Ronian still has that expression of concern. He tells that some nobles sold their souls to the demons when the north was being invaded. This gave more strength to the monsters. Gria was the name of a very powerful demon that attacked one of his bases. After that day he became a colossal demon. At that moment the monster's explosion begins to descend like a meteor. Alara comments that this monster is too weak to be a colossal. Jake and the count share the same opinion as the girl and think that the wizard is exaggerating, but Ronian stands firm and says that the one they destroyed was just the guide soldier. It was not the real Gria. At that moment a rift begins to open in the sky and the wizard says that that is the Gria of the Wandering Blade. Suddenly a giant colossal monster comes out of the rift and begins to breathe fire. It hovers in the air looking for some sign of life on Earth. At the slightest movement the monster spits its fire. Everyone who was near the place that was hit was thrown away. The trees are uprooted from the ground and the plants are burned. Jake checks if everyone is okay. He soon realizes that not only the count's house was burned but all the other houses and farms were too. Maina screams desperately that her field was ruined, while Alara laments that her dress was burned. On the other hand, the count despairs when he realizes that he has lost all the maids' uniforms. The wizard says that it is not time to cry for futile things. They must run before the monster notices them. At that moment Jake grabs the count and starts to run. Alara follows behind and Benny asks if he can run too. The woman orders him to run on all fours. The guy obeys and starts running like a dog. His speed surpasses the girl's. At that moment Maina looks back and the monster's eye shines. She realizes that she has been noticed. The creature immediately prepares the fire capable of destroying several cities and spits in her direction. Maina knows that she has no way to dodge and prepares for the worst. The others also notice a light coming from behind and stop to see what it is. At that moment Maina is hit, but by some miracle a barrier covers her and everyone who is nearby. The fire reaches the barrier and is diverted to the other side. Everyone is unharmed and no one understands what happened. At that moment Maina comes across the bikini that the protagonist gave floating. It turns out that in the hour of desperation she ended up running with the bikini bag. Now it is exposed, forming a barrier. Alara looks in awe and asks how she did it. It is definitely a very powerful item. Maina replies that she actually got it from the spirit she invoked. Elera is surprised because she did not imagine that the girl could summon. At this moment the protagonist is locked in his room, still thinking about all the mistakes he made. Kyung holds an energy soda in his hand and starts banging his head on the keyboard. He doesn't understand how he can't forget this, but he needs a way to sleep. A few minutes later the protagonist finally falls asleep, and when this happens he is summoned to the fantasy world. At that moment the boy falls to the ground and remains asleep. Benny soon asks if this guy is not someone ordinary. Elera also thinks that Kyung is nothing more than a human. At this moment Jake warns that they need to find a way to escape. The monster keeps launching its attacks looking for them. Elera angrily asks how this thing came to the south. The wizard replies that Gria is a demon that appears anywhere that poses a threat to the monsters. Elera replies that this is useless because they have never shown any threat to the monsters. At that moment everyone looks at her with a little suspicion. The girl then admits that she really is a threat, but it wasn't meant to. Elera feels that everyone in that place is expecting some attitude from her. She grits her teeth and tells Maina to do something with this useless spirit. The girl obeys and goes to the protagonist. She starts trying to wake him up with all the patience in the world. Kyung wakes up and asks what was the moment she summoned him. He realizes that he is surrounded and asks if these people are his friends. Suddenly his eyes fall on Elera, but it's not exactly what you're thinking. At that moment the protagonist has the worst vision of his life. The count appears wearing Maina's bikini. Kyung starts screaming here. This is violence to his eyes. He said that everything went wrong, and that ruining his plans, that is the worst offense anyone can do. Maina tries to explain that they gave a bikini to the count because he was the most important person in the province, so they did it to try to protect him. Protagonist screams that this outfit only protects women. Elera quickly orders Jake to take his uncle away while he still has time. The man obeys and covers the fat man. Maina feels that she will be fired after these words from the protagonist. Her life was practically ruined, but now the only thing she hopes for is to get out of this story alive. Maina looks at Kyung and says that she has a request to make, but the protagonist keeps rolling on the floor incredulous at what he saw. The girl realizes that she will not succeed and kneels before Elera. She asks her lady for forgiveness for being incompetent, then says that now the most powerful summoner in the region needs to do something. The girl's words catch the magician's attention. Elera begins to boil with anger and Maina wonders if she said something wrong. At that moment the magician screams, asking how Elera could hide it. She could have saved thousands of lives if she wanted, but she chose to hide and ignore all requests for help. The girl replies that she is really the best summoner, but she doesn't care. Everyone looks at her, seeing the coldness in her words. Elera says that if she goes north she will have no one to govern her land. She refers to them as commoners and says that people like them can't survive without having nobles to give orders to. The woman also blames the wizard for not protecting the north enough and losing her continent to the monsters. She starts insulting everyone around her of useless and talentless people who can't do their own work properly. Elera ends by saying that she will not risk her life for any of these useless people. Maina starts to cry and hits her head on the floor several times, begging the woman to forgive her. She confesses that she is useless and incompetent and apologizes for all the problems she caused. Elera is in a pose of superiority and says that Maina really is a burden. The girl just begs Elera to save them from that monster, and in return everyone here will do what she wants. The woman doesn't answer and Maina keeps humiliating herself until the protagonist gets up and screams, asking what she's doing. Maina raises her head and sees Kyung exuding a powerful aura. She looks at him with teary eyes and calls his name. At this moment the protagonist drinks the rest of the energy soda he brought and asks if she is really saying that she has no talent, even after summoning him. He complains that Maina is submitting to this humiliation and saying that she is garbage. The protagonist leaves. Of course he knows that she is a great summoner. Then he screams, asking why she is humiliating herself to a selfish garbage like this woman when she has enough talent to summon him. Kyung demands that she raise her head to the useless and incompetent person who is in front of her. He promises that he will not allow her to diminish herself ever again. Maina looks at him surprised and with her eyes full of tears. Suddenly the protagonist starts coughing. Everyone looks at him. At that moment Kyung starts vomiting the energetic soda he drank. People don't understand anything and move away. The vomit ends up creating a whirlpool full of energy, and Kyung starts to fly into the sky. At that moment the colossal monster notices the sign of life and looks for them. As soon as he finds it, he spits out that immense powerful fire, which collides with the protagonist's vomit and creates an explosion. The monster is pushed back, its own fire splits and retreats towards him. The demon is smart and manages to dodge his own attack. Elera is surprised along with the wizard. She never thought that there could be such a powerful spirit. Meanwhile, the protagonist remains in the sky. Surrounded by his own powerful energy, he directs all that power to the monster, which begins to run desperately and takes the greatest distance possible, but even so he is hit. The demon remains intact in place and begins to spit several spheres of fire everywhere. Kyung holds all those spheres close to his body and the next moment counterattacks with them. The monster receives its own spheres of fire in its body and begins to burn. It cannot dodge the rain of fire and spreads its wings so as not to be hit at any point vital. That's when the protagonist finds the opening he needed. He aims at the monster's eye and flies towards it. In moments, Kyung approaches and hits a precise punch, powerful enough for the monster to feel the impact and lose all strength. It begins to plummet from above towards the ground. The fall of Gria causes the biggest collapse that province has ever received. The flash can be seen from everywhere in the country. On the other hand, the protagonist also exceeds his power of strength and begins to plummet. Maina runs worried and sees her body slowly landing on the ground. Kyung gives a smile and confuses the girl's name, calling her Emily and asking her not to cry. Elera and Ranian also go to him. The wizard says he is sure that this guy is the one who will save the world. Elera confesses that she thought he was just an ordinary idiot. On the other hand, Maina says that she always believed he was special, despite making her embarrassed with his stupid ideas.